A warm welcome to Hill Gage at Ben, the company that challenges health insurance and challenges brokers actually today. So without much ado, please, Hill, tell us your story, how you got here and why you do what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I started my career in the medical industry. I started with a multi-specialty medical clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina called Tryon Medical. And we had about 65 primary care physicians and about another 25 or so subspecialists. Our physicians wanted to leave the big hospital system here in the Southeast. So they figured, they had one of the hospital administrators telling them basically, you're in the business of making hamburgers and you're not making enough hamburgers. They felt like they were being treated essentially like assembly line workers, just trying to crank out as many patients as possible. And that's not good for the patient, and it's not good for the cost of care when you're just trying to build as many services as you can in the fee-for-service world. And so my job was to help get 6 clinics stood up so those physicians could leave the hospital system and start seeing patients immediately when they joined their own independent practice. We did that successfully. I then moved into special projects where I helped them actually move away from fee-for-service and into a value-based care alternative payment model. We started with the Medicare patients, getting them into a fee-for-value kind of arrangement rather than a fee-for-service. So they would get paid a lump sum essentially at the beginning of the year for the expected cost of those patients. If they were able to keep the cost of care below a certain threshold, then they could keep a percentage of the difference as a bonus, which basically the purpose is to align the incentives with the physician and the patient, because in the fee-for-service world, the incentives are kind of more aligned with the physicians and the insurance carriers, and the patient is left holding the bag. So we were able to get all 40,000 Medicare patients into that value-based model successfully. So after we got that sorted out, we wanted to take care of the younger population in our geography, moved into direct primary care, which, Francis, I'm sure you're familiar with being on the West Coast. It's big out there. It was not as big over here in the Southeast, but we were selling direct to employer DPC services, focusing on mid-market to large companies that are in self-funded plans so that we could kind of control their claims at the primary care level. That was successful. We got a bunch of clients here in this geography. And then I moved into the insurance side of the business where I became a health insurance broker. I figured that, I had the medical expertise that would give me a different insight that I could bring to employers. Then this thing called ICHRA started popping up, which, it's been around for 6 years.
That is what ICHRAs stands.
ICHRA is individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. So basically, employers, as of 6 years ago, are now allowed to reimburse their employees on a pre-tax basis for their own individual coverages, medical insurance coverages that they get on the individual market. And this is really attractive to, in a lot of geographies because the individual market is more often less expensive than it is in the group insurance market. There's a bigger risk pool, so the variance and, premium increases year to year is lower. In the group market, obviously, we all know that prices just keep going up and up and up, and there's not really a way to contain that cost effectively, especially when the claims are on the employer's balance sheet. The ICHRA plans are all fully insured individual plans, so it puts the claims back on the insurance carrier's balance sheet, holds them accountable. And now the insurance carriers are also competing for the individual employees' policies individually, and they're competing on price, which brings the cost down over time. When you look at the property and casualty insurance market, the cost has remained relatively flat over the years because they have so many carriers that they can choose from, so many different lines of coverage or policies. In our world, in the health insurance market, there's only a handful of carriers that you can choose from, only a handful of plans. The costs have skyrocketed because it's kind of the cartel situation. So competition is good for the end user. And that's where we're at now. We started building an ICHRA administration platform. Ben is the health insurance AI that brokers use to administer ICHRA for their employer clients.
What a story. Courageous on your end. So when we spoke to prepare for this podcast, you told me that you had identified broker resistance as your biggest challenge. So can you elaborate on why this community is hesitant to embrace ICHRA and even when it offers significant cost savings for employers?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily that they're hesitant to embrace it structurally. It's more of an operational resistance. So in the group market, market, when you install a health insurance plan for an employer, there's one carrier that you're dealing with, whether that's Blue Cross Blue Shield or, United Healthcare or Cigna or whatever. It's just one kind of point of failure. There's one throat to choke, so to speak, when something goes wrong. In the ICHRA world, since the employees have the option to choose a plan from any of the carriers that are available on the individual market, you might have 7 or 8 or 15 or 25, depending on how many states the employees live in. You can have several different carriers that your employees are enrolled in, and the carriers are not looking at those individuals as one group kind of policy. They're seeing it as, let's say the company has 300 employees, they're seeing it as 300 individual policies rather than one group policy. So because of that, the broker loses some control over, post-open enrollment kind of problem solving. Whereas in the group market, if there's a problem post-open enrollment for an employee, the employee goes to HR goes to the broker. The broker knows exactly who to call at the carrier to fix that problem. They have an account manager that they've been dealing with forever, and they have their phone number on speed dial and are able to get that problem solved pretty quickly. In ICHRA, you might have an employee that's 7 states away dealing with a carrier that you've never actually talked to, and they can't really solve that problem. There's also a problem with appointments. So in the group world, you've been appointed with the carriers with a group appointment. Now you have to get a different appointment with the carriers. It's an individual appointment, which is another operational headwind that the group insurance brokers don't necessarily want to deal with if they don't have to, and understandably so. There's also a commission situation with ICHRA where the brokers think that they're making less commission because the per policy commissions from the carriers are lower. However, there are consulting fees that can be built into the platform that can go to the brokers. So the brokers can build in commissions to, make themselves whole. But it's just so new that they don't have any experience with it. So they're not able to kind of wrap their heads around it right now. And by the way, there are a lot of brokers that are adopting ICHRA and are really embracing it and are, drowning in new business because of it, because the demand is extremely high on the employer side. It's a executive sale. So, the employers, it's typically the CFO, CEO, business owner that's making this decision, whereas typically health insurance is an HR director sale. So that's kind of a mindset shift that is a little different in the ICHRA world, but the decisions are made a little quicker when they're done on the top C-suite level. So there's pros and cons. We're extremely bullish on ICHRA. We think that it's the best solution out there right now. And we think that a lot of brokers are going to, be coming around to it. They already are. ICHRA's been doubling year over year over year. And we think, in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be the dominant health insurance strategy in the United States.
So tell us, how many years have you been, you say years over years over years for our audience. How many years has been in activity?
This is Ben's first year. So we have 1,500 committed lives this year in the ICHRA world. So ICHRA has been around for 6 years, like I mentioned earlier. There are 1 million individual employees covered by an ICHRA plan as of open enrollment of this past year. And there's, 85 million Americans covered by group health insurance in the United States. So there's a lot of room to run. We're hearing that the ICHRA market doubled this year to 2 million. So the growth is steady. Then the biggest growth, surprisingly, has been in the middle market kind of cohort, which is great.
Size? Give me the size of the business.
Middle market, so would be 500 employees, 2 to 700 employees.
Okay, so how do you differentiate yourself on this market? That's fast growing, but I'm sure you have competitions.
Yeah, so there are a lot of competitors for us in this market. I think there's about 64 last time we checked. And we didn't start building this platform because there was any lack of competition. We saw the platforms that were being built, and you can kind of put it into 2 different categories. There are the really tech heavy, the platforms that are clearly built by people who really know what they're doing on the tech side, but they do not really work for how insurance is actually implemented. You can tell that there's not the insurance expertise that comes along with that really strong tech. Then the other kind of cohort of platforms is, they're really strong on the insurance side, but they look like they were built in 1999. Like it looks like an Excel spreadsheet, essentially. The tech is just really bad. So we found a real opportunity in having strong insurance expertise and strong tech. We hired the CIO from a Fortune 500 company who was big into AI. We hired a AI strategist out of Disney. We've got one of the largest insurance wholesalers in the country as a strategic investor in our platform. And so our goal is to build a very AI heavy, very, well distributed tech platform that leans into the AI chat. A lot of the platforms out there are relying on humans to go in there and consult with each employee individually to help them pick a plan. Now that the employees have access to every plan in the individual market, and that doesn't scale. And as ICHRA grows, what we're hearing from some of these companies is, I'm worried for when ICHRA grows bigger than it is right now, because I'm going to have to hire a ton of people to go have those conversations with employees. And if the concern that you have about your kind of specialty in the insurance world is that you don't want it to grow, if that makes you nervous, then that's a problem. So, the whole world has been trained on the AI chat interface for the last several years. There's a reason why it's the fastest growing technology that we've seen in our lifetimes. It's extremely simple and it replaces the human kind of conversational element. So then the AI is actually enrolling the employees in a plan. The employees just have a conversation with us, whether that's on your computer, on your phone. The kind of AI audio is so good now that they can go to a payphone and call us and talk to an AI, and it sounds just like a human, if, for the people who are resistant to either typing or talking on their phone. So we're casting a wide net, but it's all AI driven plan selection. And we're making it as easy as possible for the employees to enroll.
So UX and UI are your differentiators.
UX and UI, and also the connections to the in the insurance world to the carriers, and knowing which plans to actually recommend to the employee.
And how do you do this? Because they keep changing, right? It's not so easy. And then the websites are not so accessible for AI and everything. So how do you do this?
Right. So one of the benefits to having our CIO is anything that a human can do on a computer, AI can do on a computer. So we spend a lot of time building our online automations where we're not relying on humans going in there and keying in applications to the carriers, because that leads to all sorts of errors. If someone's on their 500th application of the day and they're rubbing their eyes trying to, about to fall asleep, they're going to key in a couple of wrong digits. The AI doesn't key in any wrong digits. So we're able to constantly go in there and make sure that everything's looking right in the portal, and it's all AI driven.
Okay. All right. So then your AI is able to identify all these different policies and everything, and like navigate those websites seamlessly, because I was under the impression that some were not so AI friendly to collect information.
Yeah. So some are not, and there's going to be difficulty ratings for some of the carriers. It's going to be unrealistic to assume that it can be a fully automated process, but you'd be surprised. More often than not, the carriers are going to be automatable. Again, if a human can do it, then an AI can do it. It's just that simple. And so as long as the carrier doesn't expect you to have a conversation with an employee at that carrier to enroll the plan, that would be the situation where we would have trouble actually enrolling it. So there's probably several of those. In this market, there's a bunch of kind of onesie-twosie kind of smaller carriers that are in kind of niche geographies that we would probably struggle with enrolling. But all the major carriers that employees want to pick from, and all of the new kind of tech forward carriers that are disrupting the market, like Oscar and Ambetter and Centene, those are all easily accommodated.
Okay. So you're passionate about the need for everyone to become proficient in AI. And that's what we discussed in AI tools. What do you see are the biggest misconceptions about AI's role in the workforce today, and how can we bridge the knowledge gap?
Yeah, I've got a couple of interns here that are still college students. And the big one that I'm seeing is the younger folks are not using AI for a bunch of different reasons. For one that I'm seeing a lot of is the college is punishing the use of AI as a kind of like an honor code violation type of thing. So that's slowing down the growth. Another one is these younger folks think that there aren't going to be any job opportunities for them when they come out of college, because all they're seeing in the media about AI is that it's taking everyone's jobs. And I think that's a massive misconception. AI is not taking jobs from anybody. You see that, yeah, there are companies that have blamed AI for job cuts, and maybe some of that is true. Maybe they have automated some department with AI and they don't need those folks anymore. But I think more often than not, you see a lot of people talking about this right now. There's been a lot of overhiring over the last several years since COVID. And I think that companies are finally finding an excuse for kind of correcting some of those hiring missteps that they've made. And they're blaming AI for it, kind of this nebulous kind of buzzword that everyone will be like, oh yeah, well, it's because of AI, when really, they just overhired over the last 6 or 7 years. So there's that, but also there are going to be a ton of jobs that are created because of AI. My company didn't exist 16 months ago, and now we're funded. We have 1,500 lives committed. We have several employees. We're rolling, and these are jobs that are newly created because of AI. I prototyped Ben originally. I'm not a tech guy. I vibe coded the first iteration of Ben. Once it got in my tech guy's hands, he scrapped the whole thing because you can't vibe code a fully working app, especially not in the health insurance world where it's so heavily regulated and has all the compliance things. But you can create a really good prototype. 3 or 4 years ago, if I wanted to take what was in my head and show it to somebody to build for me, I would have to literally draw it on a piece of paper and say, here are the screens that I need you to build, and it needs to do X, Y, and Z. Now you go into Replit or Claude Code or whatever, and you can just put what's in your brain down into a working prototype that you can show somebody to help you bring it to reality. So anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent, but I think that the young folks need to understand that AI is a tool that can help them. They can use it to create jobs for themselves, but also there's going to be more jobs out there from people who are doing cool things with AI, and you see it everywhere.
So now I'm going to give you a magic wand and you'll be able to wave it. What is it that you would change, not about the healthcare industry, but about Ben overnight in terms of operations and in terms of growth engine, marketing and sales?
Yeah, I would want every broker to have individual carrier appointments. If I could wave a magic wand and every group health insurance consultant had individual appointments with the carriers and not just group appointments with the carriers, that would make my life a lot easier.
Okay.
That would be number one.
But is it something that you could change? That's not your circle. That's something within your circle of influence, is it?
It could be. So you're saying within my own company?
Yes, exactly. Within your circle of influence.
So within my own company, I don't know. I think, I really like the way that we're running this business. I really think that we are doing it in the most efficient way possible. We're lean. We all care a lot. We all play our roles. We don't have any bench players. We're all starters and we collaborate really strongly together. Our board is extremely strong and they're bought in. Our connections are run deep, especially in the geography that we're in. And I'm not sure I would wave a magic wand and change anything at this point. The beauty of starting a new company is you get to create it the way that you kind of envision. And so I've created this company the way I waved the magic wand before we started. So I feel confident in the way things are going.
And then with that new generation and adapting them to that AI first kind of thinking that you have, obviously, So
Yes.
how would you bridge that gap for them?
So what I'm doing with the young folks that we have here is the first week that they started at the beginning of the summer, I said, okay, I want you to create your own dashboard that's going to manage all of your activity over the course of the summer. So and they had never used AI before. So the first thing that they did was, okay, how can I use AI to help me and help my business? And they're in it every single day. The platform that they created for themselves is now what they use to manage their workload every day. So it's things like that I think was surprising to them that they could do something like that. A lot of people, they have such a negative feeling about AI because they've never actually used it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how we're trying to get the younger folks to use it.
You throw them in the pond with something real to grab, and they come back to the shore with
Exactly
the solution.
Exactly.
That's the best way. Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Yeah. And they're not afraid?
No, they love it. I mean,
it?
as the dopamine hit that they get from creating something with their own two hands, it gets the gears turning. They're like, wait, now I can do this and I can improve it over here. And they've really taken ownership of it. It's really cool to see.
Wonderful. I love this. Well, thank you. I can't wait to see the development of Ben. That's an exciting moment. And you seem to be doing great. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 year. We'll resume the conversation, Hill.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Francis. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay.